There was probably a time in my upbringing and in my faith where I would have been just like the disciples in that passage. You notice that first part of the passage? Like, hey, they're not on our side. You want us to call fire down and just like totally obliterate them? That is an Old Testament understanding of God. Like, okay, they're not for us, they're against us, so let's obliterate them, kind of a thing. And Jesus is there correcting an understanding about God in that moment, where he's saying, no, we are actually not about that. We're going to be doing some other things. So, and then he goes on to, we don't have time to jump into that passage totally, but I noticed that beginning section describes a lot of the mindset of humans. You don't agree with me, you don't think like me, you don't look like me, you don't, whatever, like me, you become a threat immediately. And I tended to notice a little more as I get older, the world's a really big place. There's a lot of different people out there. There's a lot of different cultures out there. There's a lot of different beliefs out there, values out there. And there are some that I don't understand. I started to get my mind started to be open to these differences when I started to travel doing like short-term missionary work. And I would go to Costa Rica or Jamaica or Guatemala. And I would just notice how different the culture there is. Even proximity-wise, it's pretty close to America. It's not like we're skipping the pond and going to across the ocean and a different continent altogether. But I noticed that there's a lot of differences out there. There's a lot of different values out there. And to think that the way that I see the world is the best way is the biggest fault, I think, in humanity. Not you, not Christianity, not America, not just humanity in general. Because when we hold a value or a belief, we're like, this is good. And I've been trying to do something. I don't know if you've ever done this, but you watch a movie and it was so good, and not everyone has to watch the movie. You notice that? Like, you have to watch this movie. It's so great. It's amazing. I love this thing. It's like, oh, you have to listen to this song. We'll even do that with stuff that's awful. It's like, we'll open a jar that's been in the refrigerator a wee bit too long. We're like, oh my God, that's awful. Smell this. Right? Like, you've done that. We've all done that. Because we have an experience, and we're like, someone else has to share the experience with us, whether it's good or bad. And that I've been noticing that I use that, like, oh, you have to do that. You have to watch this. I enjoyed it so much. You have to read this book. You have to watch this movie. And what I'm starting to understand is, like, I'm making demands on people. Like, maybe I should just say, I really enjoyed this book. It was great. And leave it at that. And if they want to, I can tell them about it, and I can even say why I enjoyed it. But that's something I've been doing. A practice that I've been trying to do is stop trying to make demands on people, even if it was something that brought me great joy. Like, I'm reading a great book currently. I'm loving the book. It's very hard read, but it's a very good read. It's a Barbara Kingsolver novel. And I'm loving it so much. And I'm trying, when I talk to friends about it, I'm trying not to say, oh, you have to read this book. And to say, I'm really enjoying this book, and here's why. And leave it at that. Kind of not making demands on other people just because I've experienced something that's been tremendously positive. And just saying, that was really nice. I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me. I read this part of this book, and it was really interesting. So that just kind of shows you that the human mind wants to have a shared experience, wants to have a shared value system, wants to have a shared belief about things. But then you look at the globe and how massively large and diverse this place is that we live. It's impossible for all of us to share the same belief and values. It's absolutely impossible because we grow up in such different places and cultures and contexts and even histories. If I were to talk to a Christian from the 1600s, they would be like, you are weird. Like, why do you believe what you believe? This is odd. And so to keep an open mind about such things is really difficult for a human being. And then you start to add religious language to it, and then it becomes codified and dogmatized and doctrinalized, and now everyone has to believe the same thing the same way for the same reasons. And we get really, it just makes it hard. So something happened in the 1960s with the Catholic Church. There was something big called Vatican II. I don't know if you were around when that happened. I personally was not around. Don't let the Santa Claus beard fool you. I was not alive in the 60s. But Vatican II happened. And what Vatican II was an entire revamp of the whole finding that they were not really connecting with common people. So that's when they started to do more services in the English language instead of Latin alone. And you can actually find pre-Vatican II Catholic churches still that are like, no, we still do it in Latin because that's the proper way to do things, kind of a thing. You can find they're a little bit more rare. But something else the Catholic Church adopted in there was called interreligious dialogue. And this is something that is kind of new because as the transportation has opened up, you know, railroads and boats, and now with airplanes, you can hop on a plane and be in, you know, London in, you know, an afternoon. So this is something that's new. And then the internet. Now you can have like friends in other countries that you talk with. You can have like texting apps on your phone that allow you to communicate with people in different countries instantaneously. So communication is opened up. So something that we've never been really good at is something called interreligious dialogue. We've never been good at it because we've never needed to do it, because we haven't really had access to the rest of the world's cultures like we have now. And so that's starting to be a little bit more in today's mindsets and frames of mind. So there's a few people asked some questions around other religions around the world. I'm not an expert in other religions. I'm just going to let you know that right off the bat. But question one, how can different religions coexist and not cause hate? This is a question. What are the commonalities? Who is right? How do you choose? And what cultural impacts did other cultures have on that faith? That's a massive question, isn't it? And this is a question that is really difficult to take on because we're brand new to having these types of conversations. We don't really know how to do it. One of my favorite monks, Thomas Merton, he was starting to do this, and he actually died an accidental death by electrocution when he was having his very first conference between Eastern monks and Western monks and nuns. So Catholic Church meets, I believe it was Buddhist and Hindu monks, and they got together to have a conference together, to have interreligious dialogue in the, I think it was the late 60s, 68 or 9. And he was set to come up and give his first or second presentation, and he didn't show up. And everyone's like, where's Thomas Merton? They went back to his room, and he was on the ground with a fan over top of him, and he was electrocuted by the fan and died. And so this is something that is like, I think Thomas Merton could have helped us have these conversations, but he died as he was starting to do these things. But one of the things that Thomas Merton was good friends with the Dalai Lama. And he turned to the Dalai Lama and he said, you know, I think I want to become a Buddhist. And the Dalai Lama said, well, maybe you should plumb the depths of your own religion first before you jump ship and start looking at something else. And so he's like, okay, I'll try that. And he wrote about that. He says, I never came to the depths of my own religion, so I just ended up staying there. But he had that like curiosity about different contemplative practices that he was like, I think I better become a Buddhist. And the Dalai Lama was like, no, you don't do that. Like, you stay in your own thing. Do your thing. There's plenty to explore in your own religion. So this is stuff that we're brand new with, and I'm probably not even going to do this justice, but I'm going to try my darndest. So we're going to look, there's 4,000 religions in the world, and we are not going to go over all of them because there's a lot. So what I thought we would do is we would just kind of take on the larger influential ones. The influential ones, I kind of call them like the big five, even though they're not the 5 largest religions in the world, but they're the big 5. We'll talk about them. The number 1 religion in the world is Christianity with 2.6 billion people. Roughly 1/3 of the global population identifies themselves as Christian in some way. Now, that's a broad context because there's 40,000 different ways to be a Christian in the world. I don't know if you know that. 40,000 different denominations. So if I were to talk to an Egyptian Coptic Christian and compare my theology with that person, they're going to be like, "Whew, you got some weird stuff in your religion." I'll be like, we still worship Christ together. Right? It's like, but it's going to be vastly different. One's an Egyptian Coptic, which a lot of the Christian faith actually comes out of northern Africa. Augustine of Hippo was from there. So that was a big influence on Christianity, was North African spirituality. But Christianity, 2.6 billion. A lot of them Catholics, a lot of them, there's 7 different Orthodoxes. Then there's Coptics, and there's all the different Protestants, and then there's all the different evangelicals. So there's lots and lots of different things in there, but 2.6 billion. Next one would be Islam, which is 1.9 billion people in the country, or sorry, in the world. Hinduism is 1.2 billion, 15% of the global population is Hindu, identifies as Hindu. Unaffiliated is one of the largest growing religiously unaffiliated. 15% of the global population is either going to identify as atheist, agnostic, or spiritual but not religious, or I don't have a religion, but I'm like some form of that. That's 1.9 billion people in the world currently. And then there is Buddhism, 506 million, so a little bit less. That's like 6.6% of the population. And then Judaism, 15 million globally. So those are kind of the larger ones that I thought we could just kind of look at, because the question is, what are the different cultural impacts on a religion and which one is right? So I thought we would look at that. Now the question, which one is right, is interesting because only a creedal faith would ask that question. Think about that. A faith that holds to a creed says these are the things that we hold to be true. This list, Christianity is a creedal faith. We are more of a covenantal form of Christianity that has a light creed, but then you'll have like an independent fundamentalist Baptist that will have a 5,000 word creed that you have to agree with every statement and doctrine and word in there. But still a creed. We still agree to the Nicene Creed kind of a thing. Islam is a creedal faith. Hinduism is not a creedal faith. There's a lot of different ways. It's more of a way of life and a way of practice. So, who is right is a question that only belongs to a person who is in a creedal faith. Because we're kind of like thinking along those lines, well, what is the proper way to arrange our mental furniture to understand God properly so that we're correct or that we're right? That's a creedal way of looking at things. And not all religions are creedal. So that's an interesting thing. So some of the things that we need to do in order to have good interreligious conversations, here's four general rules we can do. One is respect our similarities. There are some things about Buddhist faith and Christian faith that are similar. There are some things that are very similar between Islam faith and Christian faith. They're similar. And it's very good to not just make enemies of people who have different religions than us and say, you're totally different than me, totally alien, and you're totally wrong. Because there are a lot of similarities in the faiths of the world. But at the same time, you don't want to swing the pendulum to the other side and be like, we all worship the same God and we're all doing the same thing and it's all just different expressions or whatever. There are some drastic differences between the faiths as well. And so we need to recognize that there are some things about our faith that is very different than things about other faiths, and same vice versa. So we have to recognize differences, not just try and paint a universal brush over and all religions are the same, we're all worshiping the same God kind of a thing, because the other religions will be like, excuse me, no we don't, kind of a thing. So I don't think that's a fair assessment to go that way either. So we have to respect the similarities, but we also have to recognize the differences. And we have to understand the cultures from which they emerge. Instead of, a lot of the missionary movement of the 1800s was really more of like colonialist movements. We're trying to go over and you see a lot of the missionaries from the US that were sent to China. And they didn't just go and say, here's the gospel, here's the Bible, but and now you gotta wear pants and cut your hair and shave your beard, kind of a thing. Because it was taking the Western colonial aspect of the Western way of life is the best way of living, and then tying that up in one neat package of the gospel and then bringing it to other cultures and saying, and now you must dress like me and sing my songs and do that. And so there's aspects, we have to understand the cultures from which they emerge that are very different from ours. And then the last thing is reject supremacy. Don't just walk in, and this is something that when I went to Jamaica, the missionary company is like, don't think you walk in and you have the better way of doing something or thinking about something, because they will reject you off the bat. And that was a very evangelical organization. They're like, and we went there in Jamaica, and they literally said, we're going to move this pile of rocks. It was as tall as me. And I'm like, okay, where are we going to put it? And they're like, right there. I was like, 4 feet over? And they're like, yes, we need it 4 feet over. I'm like, that's a lot of work for 4 feet. Like, I didn't understand it, but it was like, don't question they don't think that you have the better way of doing things just because you understand, like, I know how to do it more efficiently than you do. It's like, just kind of go with the flow in the culture kind of a thing. So I had to reject supremacy in Jamaica. And they're like, okay, I'm going to move this pile of gravel 4 feet over here. I have no idea why, but I'm going to do it. So it's a good way. So we're going to do that. That's kind of the lens we're going to take this one on. So we're going to first look at the number one religion in the world, Christianity. We kind of know this one already, right? We're all part of this one. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But Christianity, by definition, is a monotheistic faith. That means we believe in one God, centered on Jesus Christ as being the Son of God and the Savior of the world. So that's kind of the definition there. It emerged in the 1st century, Common Era, or AD, Palestine, based on the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And then the people who kind of took that message out into the world. The world goal, like what are Christians trying to accomplish in the world? It's going to be a different expression depending on what kind of Christian you're talking about, but the Great Commission is kind of what Jesus set us loose on. Establishing God's kingdom through love and justice in the world. Go into all the world and teach them to adhere to the things that I have taught you how to do. So that's kind of the world goal of Christianity, is establishing God's kingdom on earth. And the personal purpose, what is it for me? It's salvation by grace through faith in Christ. That's kind of the personal agenda of Christianity there. And the key text is going to be the Bible. We're pretty familiar with this one, right? Like, I think a lot of us kind of grew up in it. If not, we're in a church now, and it's kind of the cultural thing to understand Christianity somewhat. So that's Christianity. We understand that one. This is a different one. Now, Islam. Islam is also a monotheistic faith, centered on what they call submission to God via the revelation of Muhammad. So they believe that Muhammad was a prophet of like the 6th, 7th century somewhere, and the angel Gabriel came to him while he was praying in a cave and spoke words, and he wrote down their major religious text. So that's kind of the origins of that one, where it came from. Founded by Muhammad in the 7th century. The world goal is universal submission to God's will and the establishment of justice. That's kind of what they're doing. And again, there's lots of different ways that someone in the Islam religion would try to accomplish this. You have fundamentalist jihadism, and then you have, there's an Islamic center in Lansing, and they're pretty peaceful. They're pretty chill. They're just like, we're just trying to do some good in the world kind of people. So there's different expressions of that exist out there. But the word Islam actually means submit. That's what the word means. It means to submit to God. That's what they're trying to do. And their personal purpose is to adhere to the 5 pillars to achieve personal salvation. Those 5 pillars is to have a declaration of faith, and their declaration of faith is there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger or prophet. And the word Allah is just the word God. That's all it means, is God. So when they say Allah, that's like an English person saying God. That's all it means. So they adhere to that. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. They have to do 5 daily prayers performed at specific times of the day, which is very similar to monastic Christian faith, because there are 6 different hours of the day that they can keep prayer. And there is the giving of alms or charity to the poor or needy. That is the 3rd pillar. The 4th pillar is fasting during Ramadan. So then no food or drink from dawn to sunset. And then during evening and all that, they can't eat. And the last one is those who are physically and financially able should take a pilgrimage to Mecca one time in their life. Those are the 5 pillars of their faith that all the people who say they're Islamic must do. And their key text is the Quran, which the Prophet Muhammad wrote in a cave. So that's how that one works. That's what it is in its form. There's lots of different ways that they're going to express that, just like we have 40,000 different expressions of Christianity. But that's kind of generalized, a very poor generalization of that one. The next one is Hinduism. I'm just going to say off the bat, this is the hardest one to understand. I don't get it. I have a Western mind. This is a very Eastern way of thinking about things. I don't get it. But Hinduism isn't really a thing. It's an umbrella term for a whole wide range of Indian religious and spiritual traditions. I don't get it. I don't understand it because it's a big, huge umbrella that a lot of different ways of thinking and believing and behaving are underneath that umbrella. And it's an Eastern Indian faith. The origin, nobody knows where it came from, but it's really old. They actually say that they are the oldest living religion in the world. And it started around 1500 BC in India. So that's their claim there. Their world goal is to establish harmony and order, which is a very Eastern way of thinking about things. Their personal purpose, escape the rebirth cycle through untangling yourself from your passions. So you have passions that you are very passionate about, and they keep you caught in a cycle of, like, well, you didn't get it this time around, you're going to have to be reincarnated and try again, and try again. And they have a caste system. Some Hindus have a caste system that says if you were born a slave, then that's because you didn't do a good past life in that, and you're kind of like, you got to have a rough go this time around to achieve higher up. So they have a caste system that's kind of based in their religion. Not all of them do. Again, it's really hard. It's a polytheistic religion. They don't have just one God like Islam or Christianity. There's many different gods, and they're also pantheistic, where they believe that God can be a thing in creation. That elephant, or that tree, or that that mountain. That is a God, kind of a thing. Christians have a similar, mystic Christians have a similar thing. Let's say we're panentheistic, which believes that God is not that tree, but God is in that tree. You can see the majesty of God in the tree. You can see the handiwork of God in creation, kind of a thing. They'll say they're panentheistic, which is different than pantheistic. You got to get that in there. So, and then their key texts, they have a lot of different texts, but one big one is the Vedas. Again, I don't really understand this one that well at all, because it's so broad and it's so different than what I'm used to and what I know. So we're going to leave that one as is, because I don't know anymore. If you ask me to expound, I will fall flat on my face, because that one's a hard one. Buddhism is a smaller one, but it is kind of like an offshoot of Hinduism in the 6th century BC. That comes out of that faith. It's a non-theistic religion. They don't worship a god. It's a philosophical practice that they engage in to end suffering through enlightenment. And so I actually know Buddhist practicing Catholic priests, because they're not saying we worship the Buddhist god. They don't have a god. It's a philosophical way to look at the world with a spiritual practice involved in it. But they don't have like a statue of this god or that god. It's a non-theistic religious philosophical pathway that you are to walk. Very different from Christianity on that one, because we believe in a god, the god kind of a thing. The origin was Buddha of the 5th century BC in India. He has a very long, extensive story about being born in a rich family and not finding fulfillment, and then giving everything up, going into poverty, reaching enlightenment, and then writing things down to tell people about it. They don't worship Buddha, though. They revere Buddha like Catholics would revere Mary, but they don't worship Mary. They would respect and revere Mary as an important person. But Buddha is not the god of Buddhism. So their world goal is to relieve suffering through cultivation of wisdom and compassion. And their personal purpose is to achieve nirvana via the Eightfold Path and Four Noble Truths. And this is there's different ways that they're going to practice this, but that's what it is. The Eightfold Path, these are the things that you're going to do with your life. They say right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And I'm not going to dive into all those things, but they practice those things according to the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are, life is suffering. That's fun. That's a good way to start your faith. What's your faith about? Life is suffering. All right, I'm going to go over to the ice cream shop instead. But we have to understand their word for suffering is bigger than our word. Because to suffer means to undergo something. So you can suffer joy. You ever heard that term? It's like, that's weird, I'm suffering joy. Because you ever notice, like, someone tells a joke, you don't really, if it's funny to you, you don't have a choice about whether or not you're going to laugh. Or someone tickles you, and then you punch them in the face for doing so. But, it's like, it's involuntary. You can't control it. You're suffering joy in that moment when somebody tells you a joke and you just spontaneously laugh or snort in public. It's like, oh, then you're embarrassed. That's to suffer joy. You can also suffer pain. But suffering means that you don't have full control over your life, and that life will happen to you. You're going to undergo life. All these different things that will happen to you. You have to recognize you do not have control over your life. You cannot manipulate the gods to give you certain outlooks and aspects and make it happen. No, life is suffering. Recognize that. Second one is craving and attachment and desire is the thing that causes suffering. I really, 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 really want this. I don't have that, and now I'm sad about that, and it's causing me suffering. If you didn't want that, would you be suffering? Probably not. So stop wanting that kind of a thing. That's their philosophy. The third pillar is you can relieve suffering through relief of your attachments and cravings. So they practice that whole detachment. They're going to do that through meditation practices and all that. I actually meditate in a form of this a couple times a week because it's very good for the brain. It's good for the nervous system. It's good for the body. And it's the fourth one is do the Eightfold Path kind of a thing. So that's Buddhism in a nutshell kind of a thing. And the key texts are different schools have different diverse collections of materials of wise sayings that are written down by ancient sages, they'll call it. So that's kind of Buddhism in a nutshell. And then we have Judaism. It's a monotheistic religion based on the covenant established by God with the Hebrew people. It is an Abrahamic covenant, and it's based on Abraham's promise with God and God's giving the law to Moses. Those are the two big things in Judaism. Is when God promised to Abraham to make him a great nation, and when God gave the law to Moses and said, here's how we're going to keep this covenant. 613 laws that they believe in. The world goal is to be a light unto the nations. You've heard Jesus say that. By living out the law of God. You have to live these 613 commands to be a light to the nations, kind of a thing. And then the personal purpose is to fulfill the law of God and repair the world. They want to fix everything that's broken amongst us. So they got to live according to the laws of God. And so the similarities, you can see that we have a shared scripture in the Old Testament, or what they'll call the Tanakh. We believe in one God, prophets, moral law kind of a thing. And we also believe in a messianic hope that we will... although they're waiting for the first Messiah, we're waiting for the return of the first Messiah, kind of a thing. But the big differences are they reject Jesus as Messiah and they reject him as being divine, although some respect him as a prophet. And salvation is through covenant obedience, and they don't have any concept of original sin like a lot of Protestants, Catholics, and evangelicals do. Obviously, their key text is going to be the Torah, the Talmud. The Torah, or the Tanakh, is the Old Testament, what we call the Old Testament. And then the Talmud is writings that some of the rabbis have done about those. They're kind of wise writings, kind of a thing. So that's kind of what they're about. We're more familiar with that one, especially than some kind of Hinduistic understanding that's very Eastern, very foreign to my way of thinking. But I thought it was a good time for here to like throw this question in there. Why were the Jewish people the chosen ones? This one's a little simple and straightforward, so I'll be fast with this one. They were the minority of the world. That's why God chose them. Abraham was called out of Ur. Moses was called out of Egypt, the major superpowers of their day. And God did not want an empire to get the credit for what God was going to do. So he called out a small minority and said, I'll make you into a great nation. And then it was like Genesis. God made something out of nothing, like God made the world out of nothing. And it's like, I will make a nation out of just you small little people. So Abraham and Moses and Joshua and all those people, it's like they were the underdog. They were the minority. They were not the powerful. And God wanted to show what kind of power God had through choosing somebody who was kind of small. So that's the Jewish people. Now, the question, which one is right? This is a tough question because a lot of Christianity is creedal and conversional. Like a lot of the goal of at least the evangelical expression of the faith is to go out and make converts. And then we sent missionaries across the world to try and get converts and all this kind of stuff. So the question, which one is right, is hard to answer. Because the cultures and all the different ways and expressions of religion around the world, there's commonalities, there's differences and all that. And some people are not as concerned with creedal understandings as Christians would be. So I don't know which one's right, because I know what's right for us in our culture. Christianity fits here. This is good. But to then say that Christianity is also right for the Hindu people over in India and have them deny all of their faiths and cultures that have been a part of their culture since the 1500 BC. That's a long time, y'all. It's going to look differently for them. I think God can meet people wherever they are and give them the grace that they need without them needing to rearrange their mental furniture to align with mine. So I believe that God is the one who's going to meet people wherever they are and give them the grace that they need to understand Him. Because I don't think somebody should end up in eternal judgment just because they weren't born in the Baptist church. Does that make sense? We're lucky. If we really believe that we are the right ones and everyone else is wrong, then how did we get so lucky to be right? That we were just lucky to be born in the time that we are, in the place that we are, and everybody else in the world is unlucky and they're just in a heap of trouble. I think God's goodness is beyond us. I think God's love is way beyond that, and God can meet anyone where they are and help them. So that doesn't mean that all religions are going to have equal worth and value, because there are some slavery systems and caste systems that exist in some of the Eastern religions that I think are very harmful for the world and humanity and dignity and all that. So here's a quick little thing. If someone's religion is helping them wake up, grow up, clean up, and show up, I'm going to let them be. If they're doing those things, okay, that's good. If waking up, if they're awakening spiritually, they're maturing their consciousness, they're gathering an awareness of God, they have a humility about them. It's I see the beauty of the trees and I think I see God there, and be like, that's great. That is amazing. I know a lot of Western Christians that wouldn't be able to do that. See God and the beauty around them, right? It has to be in a book or a doctrine or something. It's being able to see God everywhere. We think God is omnipresent. So if it's helping them grow up, psychological and cognitive maturity, you're maturing as a human being and becoming a solid, emotionally stable person, and you're relatively okay with your life, I think that's a good thing. If you're cleaning up, you're dealing with your sin, you're dealing with your psychological brokenness, your traumas, all that kind of stuff, and you're not just spewing it back out into the world, and you're actually cleaning up your life and dealing with your shadow and your ego and all that kind of stuff, that's a good thing. I know a lot of Christians that haven't done that yet. So if that's happening, sure. And if you're showing up in the world, you're applying yourself into making the world a better place through activism or art or community organizing or justice or environmental stewardship or all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to argue with that. You're doing well. Now, for us here in this place, I think, let's delve the depths of our own faith before we say, oh, that means I can just go be a Buddhist then. It's well, maybe you're just going on the whims of what's cool or what's interesting or whatnot. You can delve the depths of this faith and not find the ends of it. So, does any of that make sense? We're treading on some ice and slippery stuff because we're very creedal, yet, it's really hard to apply Western evangelical Christianity to a Tibetan Buddhist monk living in the mountains somewhere. That would just be really weird. You just show up, and you're here's how we do things, and here's how you should arrange your mental furniture, and then you'll be okay. And it's if they're waking up, growing up, cleaning up, and showing up in the world, I'm just going to let them be, and I'll try and learn from them, and I'll let them try and learn from me. So being conversational about your faith, I think is really important thing to do. Being able to be conversational and learn from others and be humble and be open to a relationship, I think is the best approach to it. So, dang, that took up our whole time. We only had 2 questions. I guess we're going to have to save the rest for next week. Is that all right? We'll save the rest for next week? All right. So, I told you we might not get to the ends of everything today. And we did not get to the ends of everything today. But that means I can delve into next week's content doubly and be less boring. So, all right. Well, we have Psalm 16 by Malcolm Guite. That will be our benediction. And we're going to, let me read that for you. Then help me step by step, my guide and friend. Preserve me, O my God, in whom I trust. My other goods are nothing in the end. How quickly they decay, how swiftly rust. But through it all you stay and comfort me. My one abiding joy when all the rest have flown so suddenly. For now I see my true inheritance. Now I look up and find you still beside me, showing me the path of life. In your right hand, the cup of blessing to overflowing. Your left hand upholds me still and gives me hope. And I have a goodly heritage. You pour on me your graces undeserved. You raise and comfort me until I fall no more. Psalm 16, retold by Malcolm Guite. Amen.